There's a profound shift that happens in a person's life when they stop outsourcing their sense of peace. Stoicism teaches that external validation, while fleeting and unreliable, is often mistakenly placed at the center of our self-worth. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek praise, to aim for gold stars, applause, awards, and likes. But the Stoics tell us that this is a dangerous illusion. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because growth often looks like failure to those who are not growing. Approval is a moving target, but virtue, reason, and self-discipline are steady guides. To live freely, we must learn to detach from the need to be understood, admired, or celebrated. This doesn't mean we should live arrogantly or disregard others. It means we don't stake our self-worth on their opinions. The Stoics knew that placing your emotional stability in the hands of others is a form of slavery. You become reactive, anxious, and constantly uncertain. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. Your peace must come from within, rooted in your intentions and actions, not the applause of the crowd. Consider modern life, the way we curate our identities on social media, the way we shape our decisions based on how they will be perceived, the way we avoid discomfort to keep others comfortable. These habits chip away at our authenticity. We become performers rather than participants in our own lives. Stoicism offers a radical alternative: live according to nature, your inner nature, guided by reason and aligned with virtue. This means telling the truth even when it's unpopular, staying disciplined even when no one is watching, and pursuing excellence regardless of recognition. Living by these principles makes you more durable in the face of rejection and criticism. When someone disagrees with you or mocks your efforts, you can pause and ask, is their judgment aligned with truth, or is it colored by ignorance, ego, or projection? And even if it were fair, does it change who you are or what you value? A Stoic answers no. The goal is to live rightly, not to be perceived rightly. Your aim is not to win public favor, but to maintain internal alignment with wisdom and virtue. That is the true scoreboard. Another crucial aspect of this mindset is emotional independence. You become less swayed by flattery and less crushed by insult. Epictetus taught that when someone insults you, it's only offensive if you agree with them. Their words are just noise until you give them meaning. He said, "Who then is invincible? The one who cannot be upset by anything outside their reasoned choice." Emotional invincibility isn't about coldness, it's about clarity. It's knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what truly matters to you. It's being rooted in truth, not ego. This shift also empowers you to focus more on contribution and service. When you stop obsessing over how you are seen, you free up energy to do meaningful work. You're not trying to prove your worth, you're embodying it. You're not asking for permission, you're giving value. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." This continual refinement is the Stoic way. Every day you test your ideals in the real world, not in theory, but in action. You practice being patient, honest, generous, and focused, not because it earns you praise, but because it honors who you are becoming. This internal orientation gives you strength in solitude. Many people fear being alone, not because they dislike solitude, but because their identity depends on others. Stoicism encourages us to embrace solitude as a time for reflection, recalibration, and reconnection with our principles. Marcus Aurelius would retreat into himself even in the chaos of battle and politics. He found silence amid the noise because his mind was trained to return home. That is the gift Stoicism offers, a home within, immune to the changing winds of the world. Let's also reflect on how this mindset affects ambition. Many people believe Stoicism means renouncing ambition, but this is a misunderstanding. Stoicism refines ambition. It asks, is your ambition about impact or image? Are you seeking to contribute or to be praised? There's nothing wrong with achievement, so long as the motive is virtuous. The Stoic achieves without becoming arrogant. They build without becoming attached. They pursue goals but remain indifferent to the outcome, knowing that effort is in their control, not results. Think of a Stoic like an archer. Their job is to aim carefully, pull with strength, and release with clarity. But once the arrow is gone, the result is no longer theirs to command. The wind may shift, the target may move. That's life. But the archer doesn't measure success by the bullseye alone. They measure it by how they held their form. This is the same for your pursuits in business, fitness, relationships, and life. Your character is the true measure of success. Lastly, this inner transformation fosters an unshakable calm. You realize that most of what you worried about never mattered. Most of the approval you chased was hollow. Most of the noise was distraction. What matters is this: did you live with integrity? Did you train your mind? Did you keep your word? Did you grow in wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control? That is the Stoic compass. That is the root of real peace. You are not what the world says about you. You are what you choose to be. Every day you get to practice that choice. With every thought, every breath, every action, you train yourself. So stop chasing approval. Stand tall in your truth. Master your mind, and you will master your life. Stoicism trains us to become witnesses to our own minds, not victims of them. We are not obligated to react to every emotion that arises, nor are we required to act on every impulse. The moment you recognize that your thoughts are not commands but suggestions, you reclaim your power. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself in his meditations that it is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them. This principle lies at the very heart of Stoic thought. We don't suffer because of what happens, but because of how we interpret what happens. In a world of distractions, cultivating this awareness is more difficult than ever. We are bombarded with stimuli designed to provoke us: advertising, social media, gossip, outrage. These intrusions fragment our attention and provoke our emotions, keeping us in a state of low-grade mental agitation. But Stoicism teaches us to retreat inward, to construct a sanctuary within the mind that cannot be shaken by external noise. Epictetus advised that when something stirs you, you must not let it control your reason. He said, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings, then you will forget your anger." This reflective habit is not weakness, it is control. It is the art of returning home to the self before acting out in the world. Another critical element of mental reprogramming is understanding how to distinguish discomfort from harm. Our culture has conditioned us to believe that discomfort must be avoided at all costs. But the Stoics would argue the opposite. Discomfort is a sacred training ground. When you sit with discomfort, whether it be emotional pain, physical exertion, or social rejection, you are learning to strengthen your inner resilience. You are dissolving the illusion that your peace is fragile. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." So welcome the tension, welcome the hard moments. They are crafting a version of you that is harder to break. Let's look at this in a physical sense, like the gym. Every repetition that burns, every sprint that drains you, every weight that feels impossible, that is your willpower in negotiation with your weakness. The disciplined individual doesn't seek to eliminate difficulty, but to integrate it as part of their identity. They see discomfort as feedback, not failure. Similarly, in business, rejection and failure are not final. They are friction points that sharpen your strategy and reveal your grit. A Stoic entrepreneur isn't afraid of launching imperfect products, making bold decisions, or standing alone in their vision. Their stability comes from internal metrics, not applause. Now let's turn toward emotional strength. Many people equate emotional sensitivity with lack of control. But Stoicism does not teach us to be emotionless. It teaches us to engage emotions intelligently. To feel anger is human. To lash out is a choice. To feel fear is natural. To be paralyzed by it is optional. The Stoic approach is not to suppress emotions, but to translate them into insight. When anger arises, ask, what is it defending? What value feels violated? When sadness enters, explore, what have I lost, and what does that loss teach me about my attachments? Through this lens, emotions become guides, not enemies. This emotional clarity makes forgiveness more accessible. The Stoic sees wrongdoing not as a moral offense to their pride, but as ignorance. People act poorly because they are unwise, not because they are intentionally malicious. Marcus Aurelius noted, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? This shift in perception cultivates compassion. It doesn't mean tolerating abuse or injustice. It means letting go of resentment so you can act with reason, not vengeance. In the Stoic framework, every experience, even the painful ones, can be turned into a lesson. This mindset is profoundly liberating. It means that nothing is wasted. A broken relationship teaches you about trust and boundaries. Financial hardship teaches you about discipline and adaptability. Physical illness teaches you about presence and gratitude. When you stop resisting life's difficulties and begin to inquire what they are here to teach you, you stop feeling like a victim and begin feeling like a philosopher. And that is the essence of reprogramming, turning reaction into reflection. There's also a powerful lesson in mortality. The Stoics practiced memento mori, the remembrance of death, not to breed fear, but to sharpen focus. Death is the ultimate reminder that time is not to be squandered. The moments you waste in anxiety, comparison, and distraction are not coming back. Every morning you rise is a gift, and every night you lay down is a question mark. Seneca famously said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." To live with Stoic awareness is to ask yourself daily, am I living with purpose today? Not someday, today. This immediacy affects how we interact with others too. When you remember that every person you meet may be gone tomorrow, or you may be, it changes how you speak, how you forgive, how you connect. You drop the petty grudges, you become more generous with praise, more patient in conversation, more present in relationships. Stoicism doesn't pull you away from the world, it returns you to it with renewed reverence. Ultimately, reprogramming your mind with Stoicism is not an overnight transformation. It is a daily commitment. Like building muscle, it requires consistent effort, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront discomfort. But over time, something beautiful happens. You begin to respond instead of react. You find calm in the storm. You lose the need to be right and replace it with the desire to be wise. You stop performing and start living, not for the approval of others, but in alignment with your own values. The goal is not perfection, but progress. The path is not linear, but spiraled. Some days you will slip, some days you will falter. That is human. What matters is that you return to the practice, again and again, each time with more clarity, more strength, more freedom. And in doing so, you do not just reprogram your mind, you reshape your life. There comes a point on the Stoic journey when you realize that most of your suffering is optional. It's not the traffic, the betrayal, the failure, or the rejection that truly breaks you. It's your interpretation of it. This realization, though simple, is staggering in its impact. It demands you take radical responsibility for your inner life. No more excuses, no more blaming others for your emotional states. In the Stoic framework, your emotions are not enemies, they're signals. They point to your attachments, your expectations, and your unexamined beliefs. The more reactive you are, the more work you have to do internally. This is not shameful, it's an invitation. Every moment of anger, fear, envy, or despair is a doorway into deeper self-awareness. If you are willing to walk through it, you come out wiser, stronger, freer. To understand this, consider the ancient metaphor of the archer used by Stoics like Cicero. The archer draws their bow, aims at the target, and lets the arrow fly. They can control everything up to that point: preparation, technique, focus. But once the arrow is released, the outcome is no longer in their hands. The wind may shift, the target may move, the arrow might miss. The wise archer does not despair. They measure success by the quality of their effort, not the result. Stoicism urges us to live the same way. Do your best, act with virtue, and let go of the rest. If things don't go your way, you have not failed. Only return to the reality that much of life is beyond control. Your job is to meet that reality with calm, not complaint. This mindset becomes especially powerful when applied to relationships. How often do we become upset because someone didn't respond the way we wanted, didn't treat us the way we expected, or didn't meet our standard of fairness? Stoicism cuts through this noise. People are not here to fulfill your script. They are not extensions of your will. They are independent agents, acting from their own experiences, beliefs, and flaws. Epictetus warned against expecting others to behave according to our desires, reminding us instead to focus on our own role. You are the actor on your stage, not the director of everyone else's performance. Once you embrace this, you release a massive burden. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable, and your peace returns. In the workplace, this principle is equally transformative. Imagine you give a presentation and it's not received well. The old mind spirals. I'm not good enough. They didn't like it. I failed. The Stoic mind, however, steps back. Did I prepare? Did I speak with clarity? Was my intention honorable? If the answers are yes, then you can hold your head high, regardless of applause or criticism. This level of self-accountability is rare, but it is the root of unshakable self-worth. You no longer outsource your value to others. You define it internally, based on your alignment with virtue. Virtue in this sense becomes your compass. Seneca taught that the wise man is content with himself, not because he is flawless, but because he lives according to reason. He acts thoughtfully. He chooses integrity. He welcomes hardship as a trainer of the soul. He may still feel pain, but he is not defined by it. Pain is a visitor, not a permanent resident. This emotional distance is not numbness, it's mastery. When you begin to observe your emotions instead of being enslaved by them, you gain perspective. You can sit with discomfort without flinching, without needing to distract or escape. And in that stillness, transformation begins. This lesson is especially relevant in the digital age. We are constantly bombarded by stimuli, notifications, headlines, opinions, comparisons. The modern mind is overstimulated and under-disciplined. Stoicism invites you to step back, to reclaim your attention. to choose stillness over scrolling. You are not obligated to engage with every thought, every urge, every message. You can pause, you can reflect, you can decide, this is not worth my peace. That is real power, the ability to remain anchored while the world pulls in every direction. One way to cultivate this is through a simple practice, journaling. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations to impress anyone. It was his private effort to keep his soul upright amidst chaos. You can do the same. Take 5 minutes each morning or evening. Ask yourself, what did I handle well today? Where did I lose my temper or my clarity? What virtue do I want to embody tomorrow? Over time, this habit trains your mind to spot patterns, to catch errors in thinking, and to return to reason. It's not about perfection. It's about presence. Another practice is voluntary hardship. The Stoics believed in occasionally denying themselves pleasures, not out of asceticism, but to remind themselves they could endure discomfort. Seneca would eat simple meals, sleep on hard beds, and walk barefoot, not because he had to, but to remind himself he didn't need luxury to be content. In modern terms, this might mean taking a cold shower, fasting for a day, turning off your phone, or practicing silence. These small acts build mental toughness. They whisper to your mind, you are stronger than you think. Resilience, then, is not something you wait to summon in crisis. It's something you build daily. Like a muscle, it must be trained with intention. The more you lean into the difficult with calm, the more you expand your threshold for life's challenges. And that threshold becomes your advantage. While others crumble under pressure, you stay grounded. While others are shaken by criticism, you stand firm. Not because you are immune, but because you are prepared. At the core of this readiness is the Stoic understanding of fate. Immersive, love of fate, is not just passive acceptance. It is a joyful embrace of reality, exactly as it is. You stop wishing things were different. You stop cursing the past. You stop fearing the future. You say yes to life, not just the good but the painful, the awkward, the uncertain. This surrender is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. When you stop resisting what is, you free your energy to respond with wisdom. You become adaptable, flexible, creative. You don't need the world to bend to you. You learn to bend with the world and remain unbroken. So reprogramming your mind with Stoicism is not a one-time decision. It is a daily commitment to clarity, virtue, and emotional mastery. It is a return to yourself, not the self shaped by noise, fear, and approval, but the self rooted in reason and aligned with nature. And from that place, nothing can truly disturb your peace. To truly reprogram your thoughts with Stoicism, you must confront one of the most persistent illusions of the modern age, the belief that comfort equals happiness. We are taught to chase ease, to build a life where discomfort is minimized and every inconvenience is immediately solved. Yet, the Stoics held the opposite view. They believed that ease makes us soft, and hardship is the furnace where character is forged. This wasn't a form of masochism, it was a call to strength. They saw suffering not as an obstacle, but as a curriculum. Every trial, every setback, every inconvenience was an opportunity to become stronger, more resilient, more aware. This mental reframing is not just inspirational, it's transformational. Once you stop fearing discomfort, you start mastering your mind. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, lived this principle daily. Despite ruling an empire and facing war, betrayal, and illness, he kept a personal journal, now known as Meditations, where he reminded himself to stay humble, patient, and focused. One of his most famous insights, "The impediment to action advances action," What stands in the way becomes the way. This is the core of Stoic resilience. Life does not go according to plan. People disappoint us. Our health falters. Dreams shift. And yet, nothing is truly lost unless we waste the moment. If you can face obstacles with grace, use them as teachers, and rise above your initial reaction, you unlock a powerful truth. Your mind is your kingdom. Guard it, train it, command it. In the gym, this mindset is easy to visualize. Lifting heavier weights doesn't feel good at first. It burns, it strains, it tests you. But it is in that strain that strength is built. Avoid the pain and you avoid the growth. The Stoics saw life in the same way. Mental strength, like physical strength, must be trained through voluntary discomfort. This might mean waking up early, saying no to indulgence, or confronting a truth you've been avoiding. These aren't punishments, they are sharpening stones for the soul. When you seek challenge instead of comfort, you harden your mind for adversity. You stop reacting with panic and start responding with poise. Epictetus, who began life as a slave and became one of the most revered Stoic teachers, knew this better than anyone. He taught that true freedom comes not from changing your circumstances, but from mastering your response to them. It's not things that disturb us, he wrote, but our judgments about things. This is radical accountability. It means owning your emotions, not blaming others for your anger, your fear, your jealousy, but examining your interpretation of the event. Why did that word hurt you? Why did that outcome scare you? When you investigate, you discover that many of your emotional responses are tied to expectations, not reality. Stoicism teaches us to drop those expectations and meet life on its terms. And what about the fear of failure? So many of us are held back by the thought of looking foolish, of falling short, of not meeting some arbitrary standard. But the Stoics saw failure differently. To them, failure wasn't a threat. It was a proving ground. They valued effort over result, courage over comfort. To attempt something noble and fail was still virtuous. What mattered was the intention, the integrity, the discipline with which you approached the task. This redefinition of success is critical. In a world obsessed with outcomes, Stoicism pulls you back to the process. Did you do your best? Were you honest? Did you uphold your principles? If yes, then you've succeeded, even if the world doesn't recognize it. The business world provides a fertile ground to apply this mindset. You can pour everything into a project and still face rejection. You might launch an idea that flops. You might invest in someone who betrays your trust. These experiences are not wasted. They are your training. Every difficulty you endure with wisdom refines your character. Every time you resist the urge to give up or lash out, you deepen your self-mastery. The Stoic doesn't fear failure. They respect it as a partner in their development. But this mindset must be practiced daily. It's not enough to nod in agreement when things are calm. You must prepare your mind while the waters are still, so you can navigate the storm with clarity. That's why the Stoics journaled, reflected, meditated. They rehearsed adversity in their minds. Seneca even practiced imagining the loss of everything he loved, not out of pessimism, but so he could meet life's twists with readiness rather than shock. He robs present ills of their power. Seneca wrote, "Who has perceived their coming beforehand?" Mental rehearsal creates psychological immunity. It doesn't make you emotionless, it makes you prepared. You can apply this today. Set aside 5 minutes and ask yourself, what am I afraid to lose? Is it my status, my comfort, someone's approval? Then visualize losing it and surviving. Picture yourself rising from that fall, clear-eyed and steady. This exercise may sting at first, but over time it builds mental armor. The things you thought you needed lose their grip on you. You become less reactive, more centered, and that is true power. Modern mental health can benefit deeply from these principles. Anxiety often stems from a sense of helplessness, feeling like you're at the mercy of circumstances, other people, or an unpredictable future. But Stoicism grounds you. It says, here's what you control: your thoughts, your actions, your character. Nothing else is promised. Let go of the rest. This isn't denial, it's precision. You conserve your mental energy for the battles that matter. You stop chasing shadows and begin anchoring yourself in the solid ground of virtue. Virtue for the Stoics isn't a lofty ideal. It's practical excellence. It's courage, temperance, wisdom, and justice, lived out in the choices you make each day. It's holding your tongue when gossip tempts you. It's acting with integrity even when no one is watching. It's showing patience in traffic, honesty in business, discipline in routine. And over time, these small acts shape a massive internal shift. You become dependable to others, and more importantly to yourself. Reprogramming your mind with Stoicism isn't about becoming someone else. It's about peeling back the noise, the conditioning, the fear, and uncovering the strongest version of you. That version is already inside. You just have to train it, one disciplined thought at a time. Sometimes, the path to clarity begins with subtraction rather than addition. In the world of Stoicism, this means shedding illusions, cutting away false desires, and releasing attachments to what we cannot control. The Stoics didn't ask you to pursue happiness as if it were a distant object to be acquired. They asked you to uncover it by removing what gets in the way. When you strip away the craving for validation, the fear of loss, the expectation that life owes you ease, what remains is the raw material of a resilient, grounded life. And within that simplicity, Stoics found peace. This practice of subtraction, of unlearning, is more than a philosophical exercise. It's a daily mental cleanse that keeps the soul sharp, calm, and focused. Seneca, the Roman statesman and Stoic philosopher, offered this wisdom in his writings again and again. He reminded his readers that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, that our fears are often inflated by our unwillingness to detach from outcomes we can't control. For Seneca, one of the greatest indicators of a wise person was their ability to remain undisturbed amidst fortune's chaos. This didn't mean apathy, it meant awareness. A clear recognition that joy isn't built on what we accumulate or chase, but on how we interpret and respond to what life gives us. In a world overwhelmed by noise, Seneca's message cuts through like a blade. Silence the craving, and you will hear your own mind again. To understand this better, consider your own experiences. Think of the last time you were caught in a loop of anxiety over something you couldn't change. A delayed response, a missed opportunity, a conversation replaying endlessly in your mind. At its core, that unease likely stemmed from a desire to rewrite reality. But Stoicism offers a liberating alternative. Rather than argue with what is, align with it. Stop trying to bend the world to your will, and start strengthening your will to meet the world as it is. That's the Stoic version of power, not dominance but self-mastery. Not resistance to reality, but flow with it. This mental reorientation can transform not just your stress levels, but your entire life trajectory. Another key part of reprogramming your mind through Stoicism is the concept of indifference. This doesn't mean you don't care about anything. It means you care deeply about the right things. The Stoics divided the world into preferred indifference and dispreferred indifference. Things like wealth, beauty, health, and status, they preferred them, of course, but they were indifferent to them in the sense that their happiness did not depend on them. This is where the Stoic path separates from most of modern culture. We are taught to place our value in external markers, to gauge our worth by comparison, by likes, by promotions. But Stoicism trains you to hold all of that lightly. To say, I will act with excellence regardless of outcome. I will do good because it is right, not because it gets me praise. I will be content with what I have, not desperate for more. In the gym, this might look like showing up every day without needing visible results to validate your effort. In business, it might look like pursuing ethical practices even if shortcuts would offer faster returns. In relationships, it might mean loving fully without clinging, supporting without controlling. Stoic indifference is a quiet, powerful force. It frees you to live with integrity. It gives you the patience to endure hard times and the humility to enjoy good ones without being ruled by them. This inner balance creates emotional durability. Life can shake you, but it can't break you. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Stoicism is the idea that it suppresses emotion, but that's not accurate. The Stoics didn't believe emotions were bad, they believed in examining them. They taught that emotions arise from judgments, and judgments can be changed. If you feel angry, ask yourself, what judgment am I making that fuels this emotion? Is it that I've been wronged, that something unfair happened? Now ask, is it truly unfair, or is it simply not what I wanted? This interrogation of emotion isn't cold, it's courageous. It takes effort to pause, to reflect, to challenge your story. But in doing so, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a slave to your mood. You become the sculptor of your inner life. Epictetus gave us this invaluable tool. Between stimulus and response lies choice. That space, though small, is where freedom lives. Reprogramming your mind with Stoicism is about expanding that space. It's about learning to pause, not forever, but long enough to inject reason between impulse and action. This is a form of mental training, no different than lifting weights or practicing a skill. At first, the pause feels unnatural. You'll stumble, you'll react, but with time, it becomes instinctive. You begin to respond thoughtfully instead of automatically. And in that shift, you change your relationship to the world. Let's bring this to the level of everyday life. You're standing in a long line. Someone cuts in front of you. Your first reaction is irritation, maybe even rage. But the Stoic trained mind steps back. It observes the feeling. It names it, then it questions it. What does this mean in the grand scheme of things? Does this affect my character? Is this worth losing my peace over? Maybe you still choose to speak up, but now you do it calmly, not explosively. Or maybe you let it go entirely. Either way, you've demonstrated strength, not weakness. That is Stoic self-command in action. All of this leads us to a central tenet, the importance of purpose. A mind reprogrammed by Stoicism doesn't just react less, it directs more. It acts with intention. Every day becomes an opportunity to embody your values. Every moment is a test of character. You start asking better questions. What kind of person do I want to be right now? How can I turn this hardship into training? What does excellence look like in this situation? These aren't abstract ideas. They're practical tools. They help you live with depth, rather than drifting through existence. In the end, Stoicism is not about building walls, it's about building foundations. It's not a shield to hide behind, it's a compass to guide you. When you internalize its wisdom, you begin to walk differently through the world. Not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. Not with the need to prove yourself, but with the clarity of someone who already knows who they are. That's the power of a reprogrammed mind. It doesn't seek peace from the world. It brings peace into the world. The Stoic path invites you to redefine the very idea of control. In a world obsessed with predicting outcomes, managing perceptions, and orchestrating every detail of life, Stoicism brings a radical clarity. Most things are not within your control. This realization isn't meant to induce helplessness, it's meant to create power. When you consciously accept the narrow domain of what you can influence, your thoughts, your actions, your values, you eliminate a vast amount of needless suffering. You stop wasting energy trying to control how others think of you, how events unfold, or whether things happen as planned. Instead, you direct your focus inward, cultivating strength, character, and reason. This shift doesn't shrink your life. It expands it. Suddenly, you're no longer a prisoner of anxiety about things beyond your reach. You are present, grounded, and capable of meeting reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. This discipline of distinguishing between what you can and cannot control was central to Epictetus's teaching. As a former slave-turned-philosopher, he understood firsthand the limitations placed on a person's external circumstances. But he also discovered the immense freedom within. Some things are up to us, and some are not, he wrote. That sentence alone can change a life. When you internalize this, you begin to approach challenges with a different mindset. You don't crumble when plans fall apart. You don't take it personally when people misunderstand you. You return to what's yours, your conduct, your integrity, your focus, and you act from there. This isn't passivity, it's power in its purest, most durable form. Consider how this shows up in your daily life. Imagine you've prepared diligently for a job interview or performance review. You've done the work. You've practiced. You've shown up with intention. But despite all of that, the outcome doesn't go your way. A Stoic doesn't despair at this. Instead, they reflect, did I act with diligence? Was I prepared? Did I maintain my values under pressure? If the answers are yes, then the Stoic walks away with peace. Not because failure doesn't sting, but because they understand that outcomes are never fully theirs to command. This attitude makes you unstoppable. It frees you from emotional chaos. It allows you to persist, not blindly but wisely, through life's inevitable twists. Another area where Stoicism offers powerful mental reprogramming is in the relationship between expectation and disappointment. Much of our suffering comes not from reality itself, but from our expectations clashing with reality. We expect people to treat us a certain way. We expect life to follow a smooth curve of progress. And when it doesn't, we become disillusioned. The Stoics advise us to prepare ourselves mentally for the full range of possibilities. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, doesn't make us pessimistic, it makes us resilient. By imagining how things might go wrong, not to obsess, but to be prepared, we cushion ourselves against shock and maintain steadiness when difficulty arises. We stop being surprised by life's turbulence. Instead, we meet it with readiness. This approach builds emotional stability. Think of a time when you were caught off guard by someone's betrayal or by a sudden change in plans. Now imagine if you had trained yourself to expect that things may not always unfold smoothly, that people may act out of their own flaws or fears, that your journey may take unexpected detours. This doesn't make you cynical, it makes you wise. You still hope for the best, but you're prepared for reality. This subtle shift in mindset transforms you from someone constantly blindsided by life to someone who navigates its uncertainty with composure. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most revered Stoic philosophers and the Emperor of Rome, reminded himself regularly of life's impermanence and unpredictability. In his meditations, he writes not to impress others, but to reinforce his own discipline. He practiced daily mental reprogramming by reminding himself of what truly mattered: reason, virtue, duty, and presence. He didn't seek control over others, nor did he crave endless pleasure or recognition. He returned again and again to his own responsibility, to be a good man in all circumstances. His example shows us that even in positions of great power, true peace comes from within. No title, wealth, or achievement grants you inner stability. Only your choices do. Reprogramming your thoughts through Stoicism means becoming conscious of where you allow your mind to dwell. Are you obsessing over things you can't change? Are you giving your power away by reacting emotionally to trivial matters? Are you letting fear shape your decisions instead of reason? The Stoic way is not to suppress emotion, but to elevate reason above impulse. To pause before reacting. To ask yourself, is this within my control? Is this a wise use of my energy? Over time, this pause becomes a habit. That habit becomes a mindset. And that mindset becomes the foundation of a life rooted in freedom, not external freedom, but the deeper, rarer kind, freedom of the mind. In all of this, your compass must be virtue. Without it, control becomes manipulation. Without it, detachment becomes indifference. The Stoics weren't robots. They loved deeply, they cared for humanity, but they did so through the lens of wisdom. They didn't allow temporary emotions or the noise of the crowd to dictate their path. They sought alignment with what was just, courageous, temperate, and wise. And in doing so, they found something more valuable than fleeting success or comfort. They found peace. In the quiet moments when you are alone with your thoughts, you have the opportunity to re-examine the stories you've been telling yourself. This practice is at the core of reprogramming your mind with Stoicism. Rather than letting old narratives dictate your feelings and actions, you begin to question them. Ask yourself, which beliefs have I inherited from a world that prizes external validation? Which thoughts have become automatic responses to fear, failure, or rejection? The Stoic approach is to challenge these internal scripts by replacing them with ones grounded in reason, virtue, and self-respect. When you catch yourself saying, "I'm not good enough," or "I must please everyone," pause and consider a different narrative. My worth is determined by my own actions, not by others' opinions. This conscious shift, refusing to let outdated, unhelpful beliefs run unchecked, is the beginning of genuine mental reprogramming. Along with this internal inquiry, a crucial element of Stoic practice is the cultivation of a disciplined mindset through regular self-reflection. Consider establishing a routine of writing down your thoughts and experiences each day, not as a means of self-criticism, but as a way to map your progress. Reflect on moments when your initial reaction was clouded by emotion, and then explore how you might have responded more calmly and wisely. Over time, these written reflections become a personal record of growth, a testament to the transformation occurring within you. They reveal patterns, both limiting and empowering, and provide the raw material for rewriting your internal dialogue. Another powerful tool in this process is the practice of mindful detachment from expectations. In our modern lives, we are conditioned to equate success with external indicators like praise, achievement, and social approval. Yet, Stoicism teaches that true success is measured by the consistency of your character and the clarity of your intentions. When you release the need for validation, you liberate your mind from constant worry about outcomes that are not fully under your control. This shift enables you to focus on the process rather than the result, finding satisfaction in the act of pursuing excellence, irrespective of external rewards. In every situation, from a challenging work project to a difficult conversation, remind yourself that your effort and integrity are what truly matter. Imagine approaching each day as a series of opportunities to align your actions with your highest values. Instead of being swayed by fleeting emotions or the opinions of others, you begin to view every encounter as a chance to practice virtue. When faced with criticism, you no longer internalize it as a personal flaw, but see it as a moment to learn and adjust. When you experience setbacks, you treat them as feedback rather than as a measure of your worth. This is not about denying pain or suppressing emotion, it's about transforming your relationship with them. You allow yourself to feel deeply, yet remain anchored by the understanding that your inner strength does not depend on external validation. Furthermore, reprogramming your mind involves a conscious decision to embrace uncertainty and imperfection. The Stoics recognized that life is inherently unpredictable and that seeking absolute control over external events is a futile endeavor. Instead, they focused on cultivating an inner calm that remains unshaken by life's vicissitudes. This perspective encourages you to view challenges not as catastrophes to be feared, but as essential elements of growth. Every moment of discomfort, every unexpected twist, becomes an opportunity to practice resilience. By adopting this mindset, you learn to accept the ebb and flow of life with equanimity, understanding that both success and failure are temporary and do not define you. In practical terms, begin by setting small, achievable goals that reinforce this mindset shift. Whether it's committing to a daily meditation practice, limiting your exposure to negative influences, or engaging in regular physical exercise, these actions serve as anchors for your reprogrammed mind. Over time, as you consistently choose to focus on what is within your control, you'll notice a profound change in your overall sense of peace and well-being. Your internal dialogue becomes more measured and reflective, and the chaos of the external world loses its power over you. Ultimately, reprogramming your thoughts with Stoicism is about reclaiming the sovereignty of your mind. It is a lifelong process of learning, unlearning and relearning how to live in alignment with your true nature. The journey is not always easy. There will be moments of struggle and doubt, but with each conscious choice to respond rather than react, to reflect rather than conform, you build a foundation of inner peace that is resilient in the face of any storm. Embrace this process as a path toward not just surviving but thriving in the fullness of your humanity. To transform the mind, one must first examine the stories it tells. Every day you are narrating your own life, often without realizing it. These inner stories shape how you see yourself, how you respond to others, and how you interpret the world around you. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that the external world holds no true power over us unless we let it. He wrote, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them." In other words, the world presents events, but your mind constructs the narrative. And this narrative, if left unexamined, can become a prison. If you believe you are always a victim, you will see evidence of injustice everywhere. If you believe you are destined to fail, your actions will quietly reinforce that expectation. But if you take ownership of the script, if you decide to revise the story, you reclaim the power to shape your identity. The Stoics were not interested in illusions of grandeur, nor in playing the role of the hero or the martyr. They were interested in truth. And the truth is that your mind is not a passive receiver, it is an active participant in how reality unfolds. To reprogram your thoughts, begin by noticing the phrases you repeat to yourself. Are they empowering or limiting? Are they inherited beliefs or conscious affirmations? For instance, someone may go through life repeating, "I'm not good enough. People always let me down," or "I'm just not meant for success." These mantras aren't facts, they're mental habits, and like any habit, they can be changed. The Stoic approach begins with observation, not judgment. Don't criticize yourself for thinking negatively. Instead, study the thought, question its origin, and decide if it's worth keeping. Epictetus taught that every impression must be tested. He advised his students not to accept their first emotional reaction, but to pause and ask, "Is this truly how things are, or just how they appear to me?" This pause, this moment of awareness, is where transformation begins. When you refuse to automatically believe every anxious thought or every defensive reaction, you begin to loosen the grip that unhealthy narratives have on your life. And with time, that space between stimulus and response becomes wider. Within that space is your freedom. Consider how this plays out in your everyday life. Maybe you feel anger when someone cuts you off in traffic. Maybe you feel rejected when a friend doesn't text back. Maybe you feel inadequate when you see someone more successful on social media. In each scenario, the emotion is triggered not just by the event, but by your interpretation of the event. The Stoic doesn't deny the event. He just refuses to let it hijack his peace. He asks, what is truly happening here, and what is within my control? This practice, repeated over time, reshapes not just your reactions, but your worldview. Reprogramming your thoughts also means confronting the fears that lie beneath your mental patterns. Fear is a powerful sculptor of the mind. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being alone. But the Stoics saw fear as a teacher, not an enemy. Seneca wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Most of our suffering comes from anticipating things that may never happen. And in doing so, we not only rob the present of peace, we also strengthen the false belief that we cannot handle life's challenges. The Stoic mind counters this by visualizing adversity, preparing calmly, and trusting in its resilience. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about building a mind that can endure what is difficult without collapsing. A mind that doesn't run from discomfort, but learns from it. A mind that sees failure not as a personal indictment, but as feedback. That is what Stoicism offers, a philosophy of resilience, built not on blind optimism, but on reasoned strength. And this kind of strength must be trained daily. One of the most practical tools the Stoics used was journaling. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for an audience. He wrote them for himself to reflect, to clarify, to recenter. You can do the same. Each morning or evening, write out the thoughts that dominate your mind. Ask, is this thought helpful? Is it grounded in reason? Is it aligned with my values? Slowly you begin to unlearn the noise and relearn the truth. Journaling is not just a way to capture thoughts, it's a way to reshape them. Another practice is negative visualization, also known as premeditatio malorum. This is the act of imagining potential setbacks, not to dwell on them, but to prepare your mind. The modern world tells you to only think positive. The Stoics, in contrast, tell you to be grounded. Imagine the loss of your job, your health, your status, then ask, how would I endure? How would I adapt? This kind of visualization strengthens your inner fortitude. It reprograms the mind to face reality, not fear it. Let's also touch on the importance of values. Your thoughts become disordered when you have no clear compass. The Stoics built their lives around a few central virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. These values act as mental anchors. When life becomes turbulent, when your mind becomes clouded, you return to these virtues. You ask, what would wisdom do right now? What would courage look like in this moment? These questions reorient your mind toward what truly matters. And that orientation, repeated day after day, becomes a new mental default. To reprogram your thoughts is to become the sculptor of your mind. Each day you chip away at what no longer serves you. Each moment of awareness is a strike of the chisel. Each new belief aligned with reason and virtue is a line added to your inner blueprint. This is the work of a lifetime, but it is the most worthwhile work there is. Because when you change your mind, you change your life. True clarity begins when we remove ourselves from the noise of the world. The Stoics knew that much of our suffering doesn't stem from what happens to us, but from how we interpret what happens. They urged us to slow down, to look within, and to cultivate a state of presence. In today's age of constant distraction, where every notification pulls at our attention and every scroll adds another layer of noise, Stoic thought becomes more vital than ever. To reprogram your thoughts, you must first reclaim your attention. Attention is power, and if you're not directing it, someone else is. Imagine your mind as a garden. If you are not planting intentional thoughts, weeds will grow in their place. These weeds are doubt, fear, anxiety, resentment, often not yours, but adopted from others or shaped by the media, culture, or your past. Marcus Aurelius emphasized this when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength begins with awareness. The kind of awareness that watches your thoughts, not as truths, but as passing clouds. You are not what you think. You are the observer of those thoughts. And this distinction is everything. Epictetus taught his students to create a boundary between what is within their control and what is not. This boundary isn't just external, it's internal too. Your fears are not always your own. Your insecurities may have been handed to you, but you can choose which ones to keep. That's the first step in mental freedom. Ask yourself, who taught me to think this way? Where did this belief come from? Is it aligned with my values or just a reaction to pressure? These questions help separate the useful from the useless. And once you do that, clarity starts to form. The Stoics weren't against thinking. They were against being consumed by thought. They believed in reflection, not rumination. There's a difference between contemplating your values and obsessing over a hypothetical failure. The former builds you, the latter breaks you. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That quote holds even more weight in a world where anxiety is often fueled by the infinite what-ifs our minds produce. But the Stoic response is simple: come back to what is real. What's in front of you? What action can you take? What can you influence right now? By focusing your energy on the present, you regain command of your inner world. The future is not here. The past is gone. All you truly own is this moment. And yet how rarely we fully occupy it. Most people are chasing something or running from something. The Stoic lives differently. He stands still and sees clearly. He is not moved by every wind, not shaken by every storm, because he has trained himself again and again to return to what is within his control. And that control always begins with thought. There's also a power in simplifying your inner world. Our minds can become cluttered with so many desires, so many goals, so many narratives. But clarity is found not in addition, but in subtraction. What if you stopped trying to be everything and just focused on being yourself? What if you stopped chasing the image and focused on building the character? The Stoic path invites you to strip away the non-essential. When you let go of what doesn't serve you, you find what does. And what remains is enough. Consider how this applies to your daily routines. You may wake up and immediately feel a wave of stress, not from your circumstances, but from the avalanche of thoughts telling you you're behind, not enough, or in danger. That mental spiral is a habit, and like all habits, it can be broken. The Stoics would recommend beginning your day with intention, perhaps journaling, reflecting, or simply breathing deeply. Set the tone internally before the world has a chance to impose its tone on you. Guard your mind like a fortress, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. In practical terms, reprogramming your thoughts means creating rituals of discipline, whether that's a daily walk in silence, a routine of gratitude, a habit of questioning your automatic responses. Each act is a reclaiming. You're not at the mercy of your programming. You are the programmer. But programming requires consistency. Seneca didn't write one letter and stop. Marcus didn't reflect once and move on. Their growth was forged in repetition, not perfection, but perseverance. And so must yours be. Let's not forget, Stoicism doesn't ask us to escape emotion. It asks us to understand it. When you feel angry, sad, or afraid, the Stoics wouldn't tell you to suppress it. They would tell you to explore it. What is this emotion trying to show you? What value is being challenged? What expectation is unmet? In understanding your emotions, you rob them of their ability to control you, and you replace blind reaction with conscious response. That is emotional reprogramming. That is mental mastery. In a distracted world, clarity is rebellion. In a reactive world, stillness is strength. And in a world that profits off your confusion, Stoicism offers peace. But not the kind of peace that is passive or naive. This is the peace of a disciplined mind. A mind that doesn't flinch in the face of chaos. A mind that knows the difference between what matters and what doesn't. And a mind that above all knows itself. This is the path you are walking. Every moment you choose clarity over confusion, presence over distraction, discipline over impulse. You are reprogramming your life. And with time, repetition, and courage, you will not only think differently, you will live differently. There is a quiet strength in the Stoic way of thinking that doesn't seek attention, approval, or recognition. This strength lies in detachment, not the kind of detachment that is cold or indifferent, but the kind that liberates the soul from the slavery of external validation. One of the core tenets of Stoicism is that we should concern ourselves only with what is in our control. Our opinions, our actions, our choices, these are ours. Everything else, praise, blame, reputation, fame, fortune, is not. When you internalize this truth, you begin to live with a freedom few people ever experience. The Stoics called this idea apatheia, not to be confused with apathy. It didn't mean not caring about life. It meant not letting external events disturb your inner peace. You could still love, create, and participate in the world, but your soul would no longer be held hostage by it. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world, wrote privately in his meditations that it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Even he, with his empire at his feet, had to remind himself that peace doesn't come from power, it comes from perception. In our modern world, the pull toward external validation is relentless. Social media conditions us to seek likes, retweets, and attention. Work environments reward conformity to unwritten expectations. Even relationships sometimes become transactional, driven by performance rather than presence. But the Stoic reprograms his mind to detach from this craving. He doesn't need applause to know his worth. He doesn't require agreement to feel confident. He doesn't shrink in the face of criticism because he's not rooted in the opinions of others. His foundation is internal. His self-worth is self-generated. Consider how liberating this mindset is in daily life. You walk into a room, and instead of wondering what people think of you, you wonder how you can serve them. You share your ideas without fearing judgment, because your identity isn't tied to the outcome. You receive praise without becoming addicted to it, and criticism without crumbling beneath it. The Stoic doesn't become arrogant when praised or devastated when insulted, because they understand both are just noise from the outside world. And noise cannot shake a rooted soul. This level of internal strength doesn't appear overnight. It is cultivated through daily reflection, choice, and action. You begin by noticing where your peace depends on others. Do you need validation to feel secure? Do you fear disappointing people to the point that you betray your own values? Are you constantly comparing yourself to others? These are not signs of weakness, they are signs of conditioning. But the moment you notice them is the moment you can begin to change. Detachment begins with awareness. Once you see the chains, you can start to break them. The Stoics practiced this detachment through journaling, visualization, and voluntary exposure to discomfort. Marcus wrote to himself daily, not to publish, but to anchor his mind. Epictetus reminded his students to anticipate insults and misfortune so they would not be caught off guard. Seneca encouraged imagining the worst-case scenario, not to be pessimistic, but to prepare the mind for anything. This mental training created people who were not easily shaken. They did not ride the emotional roller coaster of external praise or blame. Their stability came from within. You can apply this today in small ways. Choose to go through a day without checking your phone for external feedback. Practice saying no to something, not to be difficult, but to honor your boundaries. Share your truth with someone, even if they may not agree. In each act, you loosen the grip that others have on your sense of self. You begin to see that peace does not come from being liked. It comes from being whole, and being whole is a result of inner alignment, not outer applause. There's a deeper reason this principle is so powerful. It restores your power. When your worth depends on others, you are always at their mercy. One bad review, one rejection, one cold shoulder, and your peace is shattered. But when your worth is defined by your values, your virtues, and your own inner standard, you become untouchable. This doesn't make you unkind, it makes you free. Free to love without attachment, to serve without ego, to express without fear. You no longer perform for the world, you contribute to it. This is not about being emotionless. The Stoics felt deeply. Marcus Aurelius loved his family. Seneca enjoyed beauty. Epictetus, once a slave, found profound joy in teaching others how to find peace. But none of them were owned by what they loved. They could enjoy the highs of life without becoming dependent on them, and endure the lows without becoming broken. That is true power, the ability to remain steady no matter the storm, and it comes from knowing that your peace is not for sale. In every moment, you have a choice: seek approval or seek alignment. One makes you a slave to others, The other makes you a master of yourself. Approval is addictive. It gives a quick high, but leaves you empty. Alignment takes longer, but it lasts. The more you practice choosing alignment, the more natural it becomes. Eventually you find that you no longer crave the applause. You feel content walking your path, even if no one notices. And that's when you know your thoughts have been reprogrammed. You are living from the inside out. Let the Stoics guide you in this journey, not to escape the world, but to engage with it from a place of strength. Your worth is not in your followers, your salary, your body, or your reputation. Your worth is in your choices, your character, your resilience, and your peace. Reclaim that, live it, and never again give it away. Modern life has trained us to expect comfort, and in that expectation, we've grown fragile. Every minor inconvenience feels like a major insult, and the slightest resistance sends us spiraling. But the Stoics approached discomfort not as something to avoid, but as the training ground of the soul. They saw struggle, hardship, and pain as teachers, not enemies. It wasn't the avoidance of difficulty that made a person strong, but their ability to walk through it without losing themselves. This mental reprogramming, where pain becomes purpose, is at the heart of Stoicism. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Consider how this mindset flips the modern narrative. Rather than viewing pain as punishment, the Stoic sees it as preparation. Much like a weightlifter embraces the burn to build muscle, the Stoic welcomes hardship to build character. The mental shift here is subtle but powerful. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic asks, "How can I grow from this?" That single reframe unlocks your potential. Life no longer happens to you, it happens for you. This mindset isn't built in comfort, it's forged through challenge. And that's why the Stoics embraced voluntary discomfort. They didn't wait for life to test them, they tested themselves. Marcus Aurelius practiced sleeping on the floor. Epictetus, once a slave, trained his mind to remain calm, even when his master twisted his leg. Seneca fasted and wore simple clothes to remind himself that luxury was not necessity. These weren't acts of self-denial, they were rehearsals for resilience. When you expose yourself to controlled adversity, you reduce the power real adversity has over you. In today's world, discomfort has become something to be escaped. Air conditioning, on-demand delivery, and algorithmic distraction keep us in a bubble of convenience. But the Stoic knows that too much comfort dulls the spirit. You don't become who you are meant to be by gliding through life. You become by struggling well, by leaning into discomfort with intention, by choosing the hard path, not because it's glamorous, but because it shapes you into someone unshakable. When you choose the path of resistance, you build inner weight, just as muscles grow under pressure. This applies directly to modern goals in the gym. Discomfort is the path to transformation. Every rep taken beyond comfort expands your capability. In business, every setback is an opportunity to adapt and evolve. In mental health, every anxiety faced directly shrinks in power, but only if you lean into it. The Stoic understands this deeply. Resilience is not genetic. It is trained, it is chosen, and it's cultivated by doing the thing you want to avoid over and over again until discomfort becomes familiar, until it no longer scares you. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something uncomfortable on purpose? Not because you had to, but because you knew it would make you better. Whether it's cold showers, waking up early, tackling difficult conversations, or practicing discipline when temptation strikes, these moments are where growth begins. And the Stoic treats every discomfort as a sacred opportunity, not to prove something to the world, but to prove something to themselves, to confirm, through action, that their spirit is greater than their circumstances. Epictetus taught that we should focus not on what happens, but on how we respond. When discomfort arises, physical, emotional, social, the untrained mind runs from it. But the trained mind pauses. It breathes. It observes. It asks, what virtue can I practice in this moment? Patience, courage, temperance, these are the muscles of the soul, and like physical muscles, they only grow through challenge. If you avoid discomfort, you avoid your own potential, but if you embrace it, you find a deeper power. This is not about suffering for its own sake. It's about meaning. The Stoic doesn't chase pain, but neither do they flee it. They recognize its role in shaping who they are. They understand that a meaningful life will include hardship by design. And rather than wish it away, they learn to use it, to befriend it, to become so grounded in their principles that no storm can uproot them. Pain becomes the refining fire, and the Stoic steps into it willingly, knowing that on the other side lies wisdom, strength, and peace. In relationships, this principle is vital. Discomfort often comes in the form of vulnerability, saying how you really feel, setting boundaries, or listening with compassion when it's easier to be defensive. But these are the moments that build connection. In work, discomfort might be speaking up when you're scared, or accepting failure without letting it define you. In the pursuit of self-worth, it might mean sitting with difficult emotions instead of numbing them. The Stoic walks through all of it, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The truth is, discomfort is a compass. It points you toward growth, toward truth, toward the areas of life that matter most. And when you stop seeing it as something to flee, you rewire your entire mindset. You no longer seek the easy path, but the meaningful one. You no longer need everything to go your way to be at peace. You carry your peace within you, forged in the fires of challenge, steady in the face of anything. That is Stoic mastery. And it begins the moment you stop fearing discomfort and start using it. One of the most underrated disciplines in Stoic philosophy is the control of speech. While much of Stoicism focuses on how we think, react, and act, there's tremendous power in how we speak, and more importantly, how often we choose not to. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the Stoic chooses silence as a form of strength. Epictetus reminds us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This is not just advice for etiquette, it is training for mastery. Silence is not weakness. It is the guardrail of wisdom. And in that silence, the Stoic listens to others, to their own mind, and to reason itself. The modern world constantly urges us to voice our opinions, to react quickly, to fill every pause with noise. But the Stoic sees this as a trap. Every word has weight. Every response shapes the speaker more than the listener. Words once spoken cannot be unspoken. And so the Stoic slows down. They ask, is this necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? Does it reflect the character I am cultivating? If it does not meet that standard, they withhold it, not out of fear, but out of discipline. This is what reprogramming your mind looks like, at the most fundamental level: restraint. Think about how often conflict arises simply because someone couldn't control their tongue. A careless word, a sarcastic comment, a reaction sent too fast via text or social media. We've all been there, and we've all regretted it. The Stoics anticipated this. They trained themselves not to be the loudest in the room, but the most composed. In moments of emotion, anger, jealousy, anxiety, the best decision is almost always to say nothing until clarity returns. Silence is not just the absence of speech. It's the presence of awareness. This restraint in speech is mirrored in restraint in thought. What are the inner monologues you repeat throughout the day? Are they supportive or self-defeating? The Stoic is vigilant over their inner voice because they know that the thoughts you entertain will one day escape your mouth and shape your world. If you tell yourself you are a victim, your life will mirror that belief. If you repeat, "I can't," enough times, your actions will submit to it. So Stoicism teaches us to program our thoughts with intention. I can endure this. I choose virtue over reaction. This is not in my control, but my response is. We live in a culture that values spontaneity and self-expression, but there is quiet power in the opposite. To think before reacting, to observe before assuming, to detach before judging. This is not repression, it is maturity. Seneca writes, "No man was ever wise by chance." That wisdom is the result of choosing the hard thing in the short term, so that we can become someone better in the long term. Holding your tongue when insulted, listening when you want to speak, thinking when you want to react. These are the real flexes of self-mastery. In fitness, the same idea applies. Progress doesn't come from showing off in the gym, but from consistent discipline. The Stoic understands that you don't have to tell everyone your plans or broadcast your struggles to validate them. You just do the work. Quietly, stoically, you train in silence, you suffer in silence, and the results will speak for themselves. You do not need the world to approve of your growth. You do not need applause for your restraint. The reward is inner strength, and nothing external can replace that. In relationships, mastering your speech can be life-changing. So many arguments escalate not because of real disagreement, but because of prideful reactions. The Stoic learns to hold space, to speak less and listen more, to prioritize peace over being right, to understand rather than to prove. When two people argue, the wiser one is often the one who simply listens and responds with grace. This doesn't mean allowing disrespect, it means responding to it with a level of self-control that commands respect. Even in business, restraint is a powerful weapon. Think of the leaders you admire. The ones who command respect are rarely those who speak the most. They are those who choose their words with care, who don't react emotionally to market changes or business crises, who speak with clarity and act with purpose. That restraint is not accidental, it's trained. And you can train it too, by practicing awareness before response, reflection before reaction, and strategy before speech. The Stoics knew that control of the tongue was control of the self, and in a world where speech is cheap and impulsive, practicing silence and intentionality becomes revolutionary. This is how you reprogram your mind, not by stuffing your thoughts down, but by refining them. Not by silencing your voice out of fear, but by shaping it with wisdom. And that begins with self-awareness. Every day offers 1,000 small opportunities to pause, to reflect, to withhold unnecessary opinion, to listen, not just to others, but to your conscience. Let's bring this full circle. You are not just building better habits, you are building a better mind. You are training yourself not just to speak, but to speak well. Not just to think, but to think clearly. Not just to react, but to respond. And it all begins with a commitment to virtue over ego, wisdom over impulse, long-term growth over short-term validation. This discipline of restraint will not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. For in mastering your voice, you begin to master your life. There's an old Stoic saying that captures the core of their philosophy in just a few words: what stands in the way becomes the way. This wasn't just a clever quote. It was a lifestyle, a battle-tested mental framework for dealing with hardship, setbacks, and the unexpected storms of life. The ancient Stoics didn't believe peace came from avoiding obstacles. Instead, they believed that the obstacle itself was a gift, an invitation to grow. When we reprogram our minds with this mindset, we stop asking for ease and begin preparing for excellence. We stop wishing for smooth waters and learn to sail through storms. Imagine the daily frustrations of modern life: an insult online, a cancelled meeting, traffic that makes you late, an unexpected expense. These are not grand tragedies, but they have a way of stealing our peace and hijacking our emotions. The untrained mind reacts impulsively: anger, anxiety, victimhood. But the Stoic mind sees a training ground. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." With each difficulty, we are being tempered, like iron in fire. The more we resist reality, the more we suffer. But the moment we decide to align with it, we discover freedom. This doesn't mean we become passive or weak. Quite the opposite. The Stoic response to difficulty is action, measured, disciplined, and intentional action. Marcus Aurelius would wake each morning and remind himself that he would face rudeness, selfishness, and ignorance from others. Why? So he wouldn't be surprised when it happened. So he could prepare his character, not just his calendar. This is one of the most empowering habits we can form: preparing for the day not with to-do lists, but with virtue. Not just asking, "What do I need to get done?" but "What kind of person must I be today?" Let's take a very real-world example: fitness. You want to change your body, build strength, improve your health. That journey is filled with discomfort, sore muscles, early mornings, delayed gratification. Most people give up at the first sign of difficulty because they equate pain with failure. The Stoic reprograms that association. Pain becomes proof. Resistance becomes progress. Each hard workout becomes a moment of becoming. You learn to associate difficulty with growth, not defeat. And once your mind is wired that way, nothing can stop you. The discomfort is no longer something to avoid, it's something you chase. The same logic applies in business. Building something meaningful, whether it's a startup, a book, or a career, will invite resistance. Deadlines, setbacks, rejection, fear, and yet, the Stoic reminds you, you are stronger than you think. The challenge is not an enemy, but a mirror. It reflects your discipline, your adaptability, and your will. Every rejection becomes a redirection. Every mistake becomes a mentor. When you begin to internalize this mindset, failure stops being personal and starts becoming educational. You stop chasing outcomes and start chasing mastery. Reprogramming your thoughts with Stoicism also means questioning your assumptions. So many of our emotional reactions are built on invisible beliefs, assumptions we've never tested. We assume we need validation from others to feel worthy. We assume that discomfort is bad. We assume that success means being liked, wealthy, or admired. But the Stoic says, examine that. Who told you that was true? Do these beliefs serve you, or do they enslave you? Most of our suffering doesn't come from events. It comes from interpretation. The Stoic sharpens their thinking until it cuts through illusion. Consider your emotional triggers. Maybe someone criticizes you, and you feel defensive. The untrained mind reacts: anger, shame, withdrawal. But the Stoic mind pauses. Is this true? They ask. Is this useful? They choose response over reaction. They know that their dignity is not dependent on anyone's opinion. Their worth is self-generated. This isn't arrogance, it's sovereignty. They don't deny emotion, they examine it. They let it pass through them like wind through a mountain. Unmoved, they remain rooted. This is where Stoicism intersects powerfully with mental health. Anxiety, depression, and self-doubt often arise when we feel powerless, stuck, or disconnected from purpose. The Stoic offers a path, not as a cure-all but as a practice. Journaling, reflection, breathing, meditation, reframing thoughts. These tools are not new. They were the original cognitive behavioral therapy. Epictetus taught that it's not things that disturb us, but our judgment about things. In other words, freedom begins not in changing the world, but in changing how we see it. This idea is echoed in the modern therapeutic world. Psychologists today teach us to identify cognitive distortions, catastrophizing, black and white thinking, personalization. Stoics did the same thousands of years ago. They understood that emotion follows thought, that our internal narratives shape our reality. So they taught discipline, not to suppress feelings, but to purify them, to anchor emotion in wisdom. When you feel anxious, the Stoic does not tell you to ignore it. They tell you to trace it. Where is it coming from? Is it true? Is it useful? Can I act on it with virtue? Another powerful concept the Stoics offer is amor fati, the love of fate. Not just accepting life as it is, but embracing it, loving it, trusting that everything is part of your training. A blazing fire, said Marcus Aurelius, makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. Imagine living that way. Imagine being the kind of person who transforms every difficulty into wisdom, every setback into fuel. That is not fantasy, it is a practiced perspective, and it is available to anyone willing to train their mind. Ultimately, Stoicism is not a rigid code or a cold logic. It is a warm and fierce commitment to live with intention, to hold yourself to a higher standard, to meet life as it is, not as you wish it to be, and to rise not once but daily into the person you were meant to be. That kind of power doesn't come from motivation. It comes from philosophy, from mental architecture built stone by stone, day after day, choice after choice. To reprogram your mind with Stoicism is to begin with one of its most foundational practices, the careful distinction between what is in your control and what is not. This isn't just a helpful mental framework, it's the entire architecture upon which the Stoic life is built. Epictetus opens his Enchiridion with this sharp and simple truth: some things are up to us and some things are not. In a modern world overwhelmed with complexity, comparison, and constant change, returning to this basic division is like cleaning the windshield of your life. Suddenly, the path forward becomes clearer. You stop flailing at shadows. You stop assigning meaning to things that were never yours to command in the first place. Let's break this down. What's in your control? Your thoughts, your actions, your values, your effort, your attitude. What's not in your control? Other people's opinions, the weather, traffic, the stock market, your genetics, the past, and most of the future. The mind, by default, does the opposite. It obsesses over what others think, worries about what might go wrong, replays what already happened, and resents things it cannot change. Stoicism trains us to reverse that reflex, not by pretending external things don't exist, but by refusing to let them own our peace. When you reclaim your focus, you reclaim your power. A person reprogramming their mind through Stoicism doesn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What can I do with this?" That question shifts you from victimhood to agency. When a friend betrays you, you mourn the loss, but you don't drown in it. You remember that your integrity, your boundaries, and your growth are still within reach. When plans fall apart, the Stoic mind doesn't collapse. It adapts. The obstacle on the path, Marcus Aurelius wrote, becomes the path. This isn't just resilience, it's transformation. Your adversity becomes your education. That shift in perspective applies not just to crisis moments, but to ordinary daily life. You walk outside, and it's raining. Most people curse the clouds. But the Stoic smiles, not because they enjoy getting wet, but because they've practiced acceptance. The weather is not their concern. Their response is, they choose gratitude. Maybe it's for the coolness of the air, the cleansing of the streets, or the simple beauty of nature doing its thing. That tiny shift might seem trivial, but those micro-decisions add up. They carve grooves into the mind, and over time, they become the default. One of the best tools for making this shift stick is the nightly review, a Stoic practice that is as simple as it is powerful. Before bed, reflect. What did you do today? Where did you live up to your values? Where did you fall short? What will you do differently tomorrow? Seneca believed that this habit purified the soul. It wasn't self-punishment, it was clarity. No excuses, no overthinking, just honest examination. And that honesty, when practiced daily, becomes a mirror. You see your patterns more clearly. You begin to catch yourself in the act, in real time. And with awareness comes choice. Modern life doesn't make this easy. We are pulled in 1,000 directions, conditioned to react quickly, encouraged to numb discomfort. But the Stoic path is quiet. It's the pause between stimulus and response. It's walking away from an argument when your ego is begging you to fight. It's choosing discipline over indulgence, even when no one's watching. It's remembering your principles in the face of temptation or pressure. And it's learning to sit with discomfort, not as punishment, but as purification. The modern world wants dopamine. The Stoic wants depth. Let's apply this to something very real. Your goals. Everyone has ambitions. You want to get fit, start a business, write a book, build wealth, create meaning. But the gap between intention and action is where most dreams die. Why? Because we focus too much on results and too little on the process. The Stoics would say, forget the outcome. Focus on the task. Don't chase the six-pack. Build the habit of training. Don't chase millions. Build the discipline of saving, serving, and improving. Don't obsess over how the story ends. Master the paragraph you're in. This perspective is liberating. If you only measure success by outcomes, life is a cruel and chaotic place. But if you measure success by effort, by fidelity to your values, by how well you live today, then every day becomes a victory. To accept without arrogance, to let go without bitterness. Wrote Marcus Aurelius, that is the mark of a reprogrammed mind. You stop clinging to praise. You stop fearing failure. You just show up. You do your work. You act with virtue. That's it. And in doing so, you transcend both anxiety and ego. This approach is especially powerful when dealing with setbacks. Imagine you're building a project and it fails. Most people spiral. They question their worth. They quit. But the Stoic looks at that rubble and says, good. This is where the real work begins. You salvage what you can. You learn what you must. And you continue forward, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Failure is not the opposite of progress. It is the process. Each stumble shapes your strength. Each disappointment carves wisdom into your soul. And with every scar, your character deepens. In that sense, reprogramming your thoughts with Stoicism is not just about control, it's about liberation. You become free from the tyranny of outcomes, free from the addiction to praise, free from the illusion that you must avoid pain to live well. The Stoics knew that peace was not the absence of difficulty, but the mastery of response. And that mastery begins with one simple truth: you are not what happens to you. You are what you choose to become in the aftermath. Sometimes, the most dangerous voice in our lives isn't the critic online or the boss in the office. It's the one inside our own mind. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Before modern psychology gave it a name, they already knew that unchecked thoughts, when left unchallenged, become distorted lenses through which we interpret reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, you don't see the world as it is, you see the world through the quality of your thinking. And if you don't clean that lens regularly, you'll mistake your own self-limiting beliefs for truth. One of the most important Stoic practices is internal dialogue, not the reactive chatter that spins in your head when something goes wrong, but the conscious choice to narrate your life with intention. Seneca advised his readers to stop several times a day and ask themselves, is this necessary? Is this in line with my character? Am I being ruled by passion or guided by reason? These small mental interruptions can feel like speed bumps in your day, but they're more like off-ramps from chaos. You pause, breathe, reflect, and in that space, you reclaim control of your inner environment. Let's say you're faced with conflict. Maybe it's a disagreement at work, or a friend lets you down. The default reaction is emotional: frustration, anger, disappointment. But the Stoic response is slower, wiser. First, is this within my control? Second, what virtue can I practice in this moment? Patience, justice, courage, temperance. Third, how would the person I aspire to be respond here? These questions act like software patches for the mind. Each time you run them, you overwrite the impulsive habits that once ruled you. This is reprogramming in action, not just calming your thoughts, but elevating them. Another concept the Stoics mastered was the art of framing. Events don't come with meaning, we assign it. A delayed train can be a curse or an opportunity. A layoff can be a defeat or a fresh chapter. A heartbreak can be a loss or a lesson. Stoicism doesn't pretend that life is painless, but it insists that pain isn't the enemy. Perception is. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That truth alone, internalized, can rebuild your entire worldview from one of helplessness to one of empowered resilience. This idea of framing is especially powerful when it comes to failure. In today's high-speed world, failure is often seen as shameful, something to hide, spin, or erase. But the Stoics saw it as essential. Seneca argued, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. When you fail, you are given the greatest gift. Stoicism offers the chance to practice virtue. You can choose humility over ego, persistence over surrender, and reflection over avoidance. In doing so, your character is forged, not in comfort, but in the furnace of adversity. Modern research supports this. Psychologists refer to the concept of growth mindset, the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through dedication and hard work. The Stoics had this thousands of years ago. They called it the cultivation of the soul. The ancient gymnasium wasn't just a place for the body, it was a training ground for the spirit. Every setback, every insult, every obstacle was a barbell for the mind. You don't shrink from it. You lift it. You grow. This same principle applies to relationships. One of the deepest sources of suffering is the expectation that others should think, behave, or love the way we want. But the Stoics reminded us, other people's choices are not ours to control. we can influence, we can communicate. But their thoughts, feelings, and actions are theirs, not ours. When we forget this, we become reactive, bitter, codependent. But when we remember it, we become free. You still love, but without clinging. You still care, but without control. This detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. And in that clarity, you begin to cultivate one of the most sacred Stoic virtues, equanimity. It is the calm in the center of the storm, the stillness in the face of provocation, the inner silence that remains unshaken even when the world is loud. Marcus Aurelius, as emperor, had every reason to be consumed by chaos, but instead he found moments to journal, to reflect, to return to the basics of Stoic thought. He didn't wait for peace to arrive, he created it. And so can you. One way to practice equanimity is through what the Stoics called negative visualization, imagining loss, pain, or difficulty ahead of time. Not as a pessimist, but as a realist. They knew that expecting life to always go smoothly was the surest path to disappointment. But when you anticipate difficulty, not only are you less shocked by it, you're more grateful when things go well. This trains the mind to let go of entitlement and embrace the gift of the present. Suddenly, hot water in your shower, a kind word from a friend, or a moment of laughter becomes something sacred. Reprogramming your mind with Stoicism is not a one-time download. It's a lifelong practice. You will fail, you will forget, you will fall into old patterns. That's part of the process. The key is not perfection, it's return. Return to your journal. Return to your breath. Return to your virtues. Every return is a victory. And with each one, your old programming weakens, and your new foundation, built on reason, resilience, and self-respect, grows stronger. The goal of this journey is not to become untouchable, emotionless, or robotic. It's to become grounded, to live with such depth and inner stability that no wave, no wind, no judgment can knock you off course. It's to embody the Stoic ideal, not just knowing what is good, but choosing it. Not just understanding life's uncertainties, but thriving within them. This is your work. This is your training, and this is your transformation. In a society obsessed with validation, the greatest act of rebellion is to think independently. Stoicism doesn't ask you to reject the world. It teaches you to stop being enslaved by it. While others are driven by the ever-changing winds of public approval, the Stoic moves with quiet consistency, guided not by noise but by values. This is what Epictetus meant when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, because there is no real growth without first stepping outside the need to impress." And this is where true inner power begins, not with praise, but with principle. Most people build their identity around what they think others want from them. But when your self-worth is outsourced, your peace becomes fragile. One bad comment, one failure, one moment of rejection, and your entire foundation cracks. The Stoics urge us to build on stone, not sand, to define ourselves internally, not externally. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "It never ceases to amaze me, we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That contradiction is the root of so much suffering. The reprogramming begins when you reverse it, when you decide that your judgment, grounded in reason and virtue, matters more than shallow approval. Let's say you're in the gym, you're lifting, sweating, pushing through discomfort, and someone glances at you, maybe even smirks. Old programming might whisper, "I look stupid. I'm not doing this right. I should stop." But the Stoic program asks, "Why am I here? What is within my control? What would the best version of me do? Suddenly the judgment evaporates. Because it was never real, it was only a story you told yourself. Your reason pulls you back to purpose. And when you live with purpose, opinion becomes irrelevant. This mindset also applies to business. Whether you're launching a startup, building a brand, or climbing a corporate ladder, fear of judgment can be paralyzing. What if they don't like your idea? What if you fail publicly? The Stoics offer freedom. Failure is not a moral verdict, it's a natural part of progress. Rejection is not death, it's data. If you let every opinion sway you, you'll never build anything lasting. But if you act with clarity and conviction, you'll build not only a business, but a self that cannot be shaken. Stoic training means learning to separate your actions from your outcomes. You control your effort, not the applause. You control your preparation, not the result. This is why Seneca wrote, "The wise man looks to the purpose of all actions, not the consequences." In a world where everyone is chasing likes, metrics, and applause, the Stoic anchors themselves in meaning. You show up, you do the work, you improve. That's the win. Everything else is noise. Another key concept in this reprogramming is the dichotomy of control, a tool so powerful it could rewire your entire nervous system if you applied it fully. Epictetus taught some things are up to us, and some things are not. That's it. That's the map. Every emotion, every decision, every moment of suffering can be traced back to forgetting this principle. You worry about whether someone will text you back. You obsess over whether your pitch will be accepted. You feel ashamed because someone misunderstood you. But the Stoic breathes, pauses, and remembers, is this within my control? If the answer is no, you release it. If the answer is yes, you act, wisely, calmly, with purpose. Modern mental health is catching up to what Stoicism has taught for centuries. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, are rooted in Stoic principles, the idea that your thoughts shape your emotions, and that by changing your thoughts, you can change your life. But Stoicism goes even deeper. It doesn't just help you cope. It trains you to thrive. It says you're not a passive victim of your thoughts. You are the thinker. You are the judge. And your mind, if trained, can be your fortress rather than your prison. Daily journaling is another practical Stoic tool to reprogram your mind. You don't need eloquence or grammar, just brutal honesty. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short? What fear did I give into? What virtue did I honor? This isn't self-punishment, it's self-alignment. It's mental strength training. Like the bodybuilder who lifts to strengthen muscle, you write to strengthen integrity. But don't stop there. Reprogramming also involves imagining adversity, not to create anxiety, but to build immunity. This is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before a presentation, imagine it going wrong. Before a date, imagine awkwardness. Not to manifest negativity, but to prepare the mind, so that if the worst happens, you're ready. And if it doesn't, you're grateful. Either way, you win. In this part of the journey, it's crucial to recognize how often you are hijacked by your environment. News headlines, social media, workplace gossip, all of it trains your mind to react. But Stoicism trains you to respond. That's the shift, from reaction to reason, from panic to poise, from ego to essence. And the more you practice, the more you'll notice your mind becomes quieter. Your choices become clearer, and you begin to feel a kind of calm that doesn't come from outside, but from alignment within. You don't need to escape your life to reprogram your mind. You don't need to delete every app, move to the mountains, or become a monk. You just need to decide, right now, that your peace matters more than your pride, that your values matter more than your image, and that your mind is not a slave to the world. It is a temple, and you are its guardian. One of the most revolutionary ideas in Stoicism is deceptively simple. You already have everything you need to be content right now, in this moment. That statement may sound unrealistic or overly idealistic in a world so consumed by goals, upgrades, and the endless chase for more. But to the Stoics, peace of mind was never dependent on external events, not wealth, status, success, or reputation. Instead, it was found through the mastery of one's own mind and moral character. This is where Stoicism becomes not just a philosophy, but a daily practice of radical empowerment. You are not broken. You are not missing some essential part of yourself. What you are missing is the discipline to look inward instead of outward. Consider how most people live. They believe they'll be happy once they hit a certain income, once they get a promotion, once they find the right relationship. But Stoicism flips that completely. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling over the most powerful empire in the world, said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This wasn't theoretical for him. He dealt with plagues, wars, betrayals, and loss. And yet he returned to his journal, his meditations, not to complain but to remind himself of his own strength, that he still controlled his reason, that he could still choose virtue over despair. This is why Stoicism is so important in the modern world, not just because it sounds profound, but because it's a survival skill. We are inundated with marketing that tells us we're not enough, that we need more, do more, look better, own better. And the moment we reach for something, the goalpost moves. This treadmill of desire is ancient. The Stoics saw it too, but today it's been industrialized and monetized. You're not just wrestling with your own ego anymore. You're battling an entire system built to exploit your insecurities. So how do you fight back? You reprogram. You stop seeking approval from the algorithm, from your followers, from imagined critics. And instead, you cultivate approval from your own rational judgment. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And what is approval seeking, if not an obsession with the uncontrollable? You cannot control what people think of you. You cannot guarantee applause, praise, or admiration, but you can control the quality of your thoughts, your effort, your choices, and your moral compass. Every time you catch yourself wondering, "What will they think?" pause, ask instead, "What do I think? What do your values say? What would the best version of you do?" That is the only approval you should chase. In reprogramming your thoughts with Stoicism, one of the first exercises is the practice of internal audit. The Stoics did this daily. They would review the day, not to shame themselves, but to learn. Seneca once said, "When the light has been removed, and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said." This evening reflection is more powerful than any self-help book. You ask yourself, did I live according to reason today? Did I react with emotion or respond with principle? Did I act from fear or from clarity? In a world obsessed with looking forward, Stoicism gives you the power of looking inward, without self-loathing, without denial, but with full honesty. There is no true mental strength without self-awareness. You cannot master what you refuse to observe. And the unexamined mind becomes a playground for every toxic impulse, envy, fear, pride, entitlement. But through practice, through intentional thought, you can build new neural pathways. You can become the kind of person who responds with calm, who sees adversity as fuel, who moves through life like a steady flame rather than a flickering match. This is the Stoic reprogramming, not erasing your humanity, but refining it. Let's ground this in a modern scenario. Say you're working toward a goal, and someone criticizes your progress. Maybe it's a co-worker, a stranger online, even someone you care about. The old program might fire off. They're right. I'm not good enough. I'll never make it. But the Stoic program pauses. It checks the facts. Is this feedback true? Is it useful? Am I reacting, or am I responding? And if it's just noise, you let it go. If it's signal, you use it. Either way, your peace isn't up for negotiation. Stoicism also teaches the power of voluntary discomfort. This practice, used by Seneca and others, involved occasionally choosing minor hardships to strengthen the mind. Sleeping on the floor, skipping a meal, taking cold baths. Why? Because if you can meet small discomforts with grace, you build resilience for the big ones. When life inevitably throws pain, rejection, or loss your way, you're not paralyzed. You've trained for this. You know suffering doesn't define you, your character does. Ultimately, reprogramming your thoughts with Stoicism is not about becoming emotionless or robotic. It's about becoming free. Free from the chains of public opinion. Free from the endless treadmill of desire. Free from the fear of failure and the illusion of control. You do not need to control everything to be at peace. You only need to control yourself. And that begins with how you think. As we continue this journey, remember that Stoicism isn't something you read once and understand. It's something you live. A daily discipline, a mindset you practice in traffic, in heartbreak, in pressure, in routine. And with each repetition, the old thought patterns, the ones rooted in fear, shame and chaos, begin to lose their grip. What takes their place is clarity, courage, and deep, unshakable calm. There comes a time in every thinking person's life when the noise of the world becomes too much. The distractions, the expectations, the constant chasing of status or validation, it all builds up like static in the brain. It clouds our judgment and muddies our sense of who we are. And yet amidst the noise, there exists a quiet discipline that has endured for over 2 millennia. Stoicism is not a dusty relic from a forgotten time. It's a toolkit for psychological clarity and unshakable peace. The Stoics weren't ivory tower philosophers, but practical guides for those navigating life's storms, generals, emperors, slaves, writers. Their mission wasn't to theorize about happiness, but to live it. And in that mission, they left behind principles that can literally reprogram how we think, respond, and live. This guide is your starting point. At the core of Stoicism lies a powerful distinction. There are things within our control, and there are things outside our control. It sounds simple, even obvious, but few people actually live as if they understand it. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations that we should always keep this division in mind. You cannot control the weather, the economy, other people's opinions, or the past. But you can control your judgment, your response, your choices, and the direction of your character. And this single insight changes everything. Once internalized, it becomes a mental firewall. When someone insults you, you realize they're acting from their own values, not yours. When a plan fails, you focus on what's next, not on what could have been. When anxiety creeps in, you remind yourself, I am not my thoughts. I am the observer, the captain, the one at the helm. Modern psychology has caught up to this ancient wisdom. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, one of the most effective treatments for anxiety and depression, is rooted in the same Stoic insights. It's about identifying and challenging automatic thoughts, replacing catastrophizing with calm assessment, and regaining power over your inner dialogue. Epictetus, a once enslaved Stoic philosopher, said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." That's CBT in a sentence. You aren't anxious because of the situation, you're anxious because of your interpretation, and interpretations can be changed. That's the work of reprogramming. Let's take a modern example, the fear of failure. You launch a business or post a project online, and it doesn't go the way you hoped. If your mind is wired to equate failure with shame or inadequacy, then every stumble becomes a threat to your identity. But Stoicism offers a new framework. The Stoic sees failure as information, feedback, part of the dance of life. Seneca, another great Stoic thinker, said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Reprogramming means you start to embrace friction, not as a sign you're broken, but as proof that you're growing. There's another trap Stoicism can help us escape: the addiction to approval. How many decisions are made because we want to be liked, validated, praised? From the clothes we wear to the words we post online, so much of our mental real estate is rented out to the opinions of strangers. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That's the kind of thought that hits you in the gut. It's brutally true, but recognizing it gives you leverage. You stop being a puppet. You stop outsourcing your self-worth. You begin the slow process of recentering your value within, not without. Now let's be clear, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion or pretending to be indifferent. It's about managing emotion through clarity. The Stoic doesn't deny grief, anger, or stress. They examine it. They ask, is this helping me live in alignment with my values? If not, they challenge it. That takes courage, but it also builds strength. And that strength becomes the foundation of a resilient life, one that bends but doesn't break. We live in an age of information overload, digital distraction, and constant comparison. But you don't need more apps or productivity hacks. You need principles. You need a lens through which to evaluate what matters and what doesn't. That's the promise of Stoicism. It offers a calm, stable center in a spinning world, and by returning to it daily, through journaling, reflection, and action, you begin to rewire the loops in your mind. This guide is not meant to be consumed passively, it's meant to be practiced. As we go deeper in the coming segments, you'll be introduced to more Stoic techniques, real-world applications, and mindset shifts. The path of Stoicism is not for the faint-hearted, but for those who walk it. The rewards are immense: inner peace, clarity of purpose, and the ability to face chaos without losing yourself. So take a breath, quiet the noise, and begin. In the quiet corners of the ancient world, Stoicism was not a philosophy of the privileged few. It was a practical guide to living for anyone willing to confront reality. And at the heart of this ancient wisdom lies a powerful and often overlooked truth: you are not your thoughts. In a world where our minds are constantly flooded with opinions, fears, desires, and distractions, this realization can be revolutionary. The Stoics taught that while we cannot always control what arises in the mind, we can absolutely control what we allow to stay. By learning to observe rather than identify with our thoughts, we begin to reprogram the patterns that rule us. Epictetus, born into slavery, knew better than most how little control we have over what life throws at us. But he also knew the extraordinary power we possess over how we respond. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them, he said. This principle, deceptively simple, becomes transformative when practiced consistently. Suppose someone insults you. The insult itself holds no power until you give it meaning. The moment you recognize that truth, you take back your agency. You cease being a slave to every provocation. This mindset reclaims emotional energy that might otherwise be lost in needless reactivity. Let's apply this in a modern setting. Think about social media, the constant comparisons, judgments, and validation-seeking behaviors that dominate so many minds. A Stoic would look at that landscape and ask, where is my reason? Am I letting the approval of strangers dictate my self-worth? Instead of scrolling in search of validation, a Stoic brings the gaze inward. Who am I trying to impress, and why? This practice of turning inward instead of outward for approval builds an internal fortress of peace. The stronger that inner citadel becomes, the less the chaos of the world can touch you. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most well-known Stoic, wrote in his private journal that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. He was the emperor of Rome, but even he feared the corruption of the mind more than any external threat. The reason is clear: your thoughts shape your reality. If you allow bitterness, envy, or fear to dominate your inner world, your entire experience of life becomes colored by it. Reprogramming your mind through Stoicism means filtering your thoughts, training your attention, and nurturing a mindset aligned with reason, justice, courage, and self-discipline. Now let's bring this down to a daily practice. Imagine you're in the middle of a tough week, overwhelmed by deadlines, tension with a loved one, and a feeling that you're falling behind in life. The reactive mind wants to spiral. It wants to complain, to lash out, to withdraw. But the Stoic mind pauses. It says, what can I control in this moment? Perhaps it's taking a breath, organizing your next task, speaking kindly when it's hard, letting go of what's out of reach. This shift doesn't ignore reality. It reorients your energy to what actually matters. And over time, that small shift repeated becomes a habit, a mental reprogramming. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. How often have we talked ourselves into despair before anything even happened? The Stoic cure for this is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It's the practice of mentally preparing for setbacks, not to become pessimistic, but to become unshakable. When you envision potential obstacles and still commit to doing your best, you reduce the sting of uncertainty. You tell your brain, I'm ready for whatever comes. That kind of preparation doesn't breed fear, it breeds freedom. There's a misconception that Stoicism means suppressing your emotions, but that's not true at all. The Stoics weren't about becoming cold or indifferent, they were about becoming wise. They wanted to understand emotions, not be ruled by them. You feel angry. Fine, acknowledge it. But then investigate it. What story are you telling yourself that's fueling the flame? Is it justified? Is it useful? Seneca advised treating anger like a wildfire. It spreads quickly and destroys indiscriminately if unchecked. Learning to spot emotional triggers and question them before acting is how Stoics master themselves without denying their humanity. This level of self-awareness doesn't just help in moments of stress, it transforms your entire relationship to life. Instead of waking up and being pulled in 10 directions by outside forces, you begin to lead yourself. You choose what to focus on. You set your internal tone. You no longer wait for the world to grant you peace, you bring it with you. That's not delusion, that's discipline. The kind that takes root only when you commit to reprogramming the software of your mind, line by line, belief by belief. Even in the gym, the principles of Stoicism echo. When lifting weights, there's pain, discomfort, fatigue. But you push through because there's a purpose, growth, strength, transformation. That mindset is exactly what Stoicism offers in life. You embrace the challenge, not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. You don't run from discomfort, you use it to shape your character. Every difficult conversation you lean into, every time you remain calm under pressure, every time you act from principle instead of impulse, you train your soul like a muscle. This is the gym of life, and Stoicism is your regimen. What's essential to understand is that this isn't about perfection. The Stoics made mistakes too. Marcus Aurelius got frustrated. Seneca had moments of indulgence. Epictetus surely battled resentment. But what sets them apart, and what we can emulate, is their commitment to course correcting. They journaled, they reflected, they aimed to live in accordance with nature and reason, even when it was hard. So too can we. Reprogramming your mind isn't a one-time act, it's a lifelong process. But every day you get to choose: will I follow the noise of the world or the calm of my reason? Stoicism doesn't ask you to escape life. It asks you to enter it fully, with eyes wide open, a steady hand, and a mind you've taught to follow your command. If you start there, the rest begins to change with time. As we bring this journey through Stoic wisdom to a close, we must revisit the central truth that has echoed through every passage of this philosophy. You are the master of your mind, the architect of your inner life. The world may present chaos, uncertainty, and distraction, but Stoicism gives you the tools to stand firm. It doesn't promise a life without difficulty. It promises the strength to face it with calm, clarity, and courage. That is the legacy of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, Musonius Rufus, and countless others who lived not to escape hardship, but to rise through it. What makes Stoicism so unique is its enduring practicality. These weren't armchair philosophers detached from reality. Marcus was a Roman emperor facing plague and war. Epictetus was a former slave. Seneca was a statesman navigating political intrigue under Nero. They lived in the real world, faced real problems, and still found meaning, strength, and peace. That's what makes their teachings resonate even today. Their lessons weren't just meant for scholars or monks, but for soldiers, workers, artists, athletes, and everyday people facing the storms of life. If there's one idea to take with you, it's this: external events don't define you, your response does. In a culture obsessed with appearances, Stoicism turns your attention inward. Are you growing in discipline? Are you governing your emotions? Are you practicing reason? This daily work of becoming is more valuable than any temporary success or praise. In a world that often pulls you toward distraction, comparison, and approval-seeking, Stoicism grounds you in what is essential: virtue, resilience, and self-mastery. Let us now think about how to integrate this into our daily lives. Start small. Begin each morning with a few moments of reflection. Ask yourself what kind of person you want to be today. Write it down. At night, review your actions honestly. No judgment, just clarity. What went well? Where did you slip? How can you be better tomorrow? This is the practice Marcus Aurelius followed in his meditations. It's not about perfection, it's about alignment. You don't need a temple or a ritual. Your life is the training ground. Each moment is your chance to practice Stoicism. Train your mind like you train your body. Just as you wouldn't expect strength without lifting weights, don't expect mental resilience without effort. Journaling is your gym, reflection is your repetition, adversity is your resistance. Every challenge is a test of your inner muscles. When someone cuts you off in traffic, that's a rep. When your plans fall apart, that's another rep. When you're misunderstood, rejected, or insulted, it's not a crisis, it's practice. Stoicism turns life itself into a training ground for your character. Use this mindset to reframe your life. Don't say, Why is this happening to me? Say, what is this moment training me for? Don't resent discomfort. Embrace it as preparation. Don't shrink from challenge. Face it as your proving ground. Life will always test you, but with Stoicism, you learn to see those tests as opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more grounded in your values. This transformation isn't dramatic or flashy. It's quiet, steady, invisible to the world but deeply felt by you. Consider also the gift of stillness. In a fast-moving world, Stoicism invites you to slow down, breathe, listen, observe your thoughts. Many people are slaves to their impulses, reacting to everything, but the Stoic cultivates pause, space, detachment. This doesn't mean you become indifferent, it means you become discerning. You choose your response rather than being dragged by emotion. That's what Epictetus meant when he said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Now apply that wisdom to modern problems. In the gym, you train not only your body, but your resolve. Can you push when you feel tired? Can you show up when it's inconvenient? In business, can you stay principled when shortcuts tempt you? Can you stay focused when the world shouts for your attention? In your relationships, can you listen deeply, love without possession, and give without expectation? Every arena of life becomes a place to practice Stoic strength. Most importantly, remember this: the power to change your life has always been within you. No one can give it to you, and no one can take it away. You don't need permission to be disciplined, calm, or wise. You just need practice. And the beauty of Stoicism is that it's not about arriving at perfection, but about the journey of becoming, step by step, moment by moment, day by day. That is the real secret of reprogramming your thoughts. You rewrite your patterns not by force, but by repetition, by choosing the better response again and again until it becomes second nature. You are capable of extraordinary peace, not because the world will quiet down, but because you will learn to hold your ground within it. You are capable of profound clarity, not because the noise disappears, but because you rise above it. You are capable of lasting confidence, not because others approve of you, but because you know who you are. That is the Stoic path. That is what it means to reprogram your thoughts, not with fantasies, but with reason, not with delusions, but with truth, not with force, but with discipline. This is your invitation, not to follow blindly, but to examine thoughtfully, not to be perfect, but to be better, not to conform, but to live deliberately. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. You already have the blueprint. You already have the tools. All that's left is to begin. Train your mind. Reclaim your thoughts. Live the Stoic life.